Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Hey, Cammy, welcome back.
Hey, Bryant, thanks.
How's it going? So we're back. We kept our promise. We aren't taking a 6-month break after the last episode. We had a fun time getting back into things, and we've got another fun episode today. Rasputin was our last topic. Thanks for joining us with that episode. Today we've got a little different one. We've talked about ancient Egypt a little bit here, a few times. King Scorpion, mummies. Anything else?
Yes. Yep.
Nothing in particular. Well,
That I can think of.
that's what we're hitting on today. Khonsu or Khans or Khenshu is the a moon god, to kind of put him lightly, mainly known recently, especially recently because of the Moon Knight show that stars Oscar Isaac. Really good. That was on Disney Plus. I'll talk about that. That's kind of what gave me the idea. I don't think you've seen it, right, Cammy?
No, I don't watch anything.
That's what I had a feeling. That's fine. I watched it. I'll kind of talk about it. He's an old Marvel comic character from the 70s, even, so he goes way back.
I
But
did look into it a little bit, and
yeah, you can't really
really
Google
cool
it.
design
Mhm.
on the character for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and the show was great. So our show though, Cammy's going to give us a story. So we've got a nice little story about Khonshu, and then we'll have a discussion. So Cammy, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. During the reign of Ramses II, the pharaoh was gathering tribute from his people when he came upon a rather unusual offering. Most of the princes and chiefs would bring him precious metals such as gold, stones like turquoise and lapis, and rare wood to adorn his estate. The Prince of Becton, however, had a gift way more dear to him, his daughter. Ramses gladly accepted this woman as his wife, and they became quite fond of each other. He would do anything to make her happy, and they lived many years as a carefree pair, until one day tragedy struck. It was maybe 15 years into their marriage when the prince traveled to the pharaoh to ask for a cure for his other daughter. The queen begged her husband to help, and so he sent his best physician to aid the girl. But upon seeing the state of affairs, the doctor cowered, for he was in the presence of evil. A spirit had taken the body of the girl, and she was incurable through normal means. The prince was determined to see his daughter healed, so he once again went to Ramses to ask him for a god to intervene. Ramses, the dutiful husband, agreed and went about to the temple at Thebes to enlist the help of the moon god Khonsu. He entered the temple and spoke to the statue of the god directly about the state of the queen's sister and his need for assistance. And Khonsu, hearing the plea of his devout subject, bestowed upon his likeness the power of healing. The priest, seeing that was done, bowed the head of the statue of Khonshu twice, and then the idol moved on its own and followed the pharaoh out of the temple into the land of Becton. Khonsu, moving through the golem, after 17 months of travel, was presented with the girl. He laid his hands on her, and immediately the evil spirit could not bear to be touched by the divine. He leapt from her body and presented himself in his true form. He was awestruck by the god and asked to have a meal with him and the prince before he left for his homeland. The prince and Gollum obliged the demon and shared the day dining and walking the city of Becton. And as the sun was setting, the demon returned to his homeland. For this feat, Khonsu was awarded with all the gold and jewels Ramses had gained in tribute, and the moon god was revered throughout Egypt as the most powerful healer of the gods. And I'm just pulling up the source now.
Yeah. That's cool.
So yeah, it was the book is The Gods of the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also called Studies in Egyptian Mythology, and it's E.A. Wallace Budge.
That's interesting. Yeah, the Khonshu it's really cool. So there's kind of like two versions of Khonshu that we get like in Egyptian mythology. There's like an old kingdom and a new kingdom version. Like old kingdom is very like he's very menacing and like a feared god. There's a cannibal hymn in the pyramid texts, which is one of the main sources for him. It describes him, Ancient Egypt Online says it's a bloodthirsty deity who helps the deceased king to catch and eat other gods. Then the other main primary source, ancient source, is the coffin text that describes him as Khonsu who lives on hearts. But then evidence from the New Kingdom, he was very gentle and compassionate. So it's really funny how he has these two sort of versions. And he's depicted like a lot of times as a child with a lock of hair, specifically, sometimes an eagle head as well. And so yeah, over time he really did change, in especially in the Ptolemaic period, which is, so the pyramid, I'll back up. The pyramid texts are from 2350 BCE, while the coffin texts are 300 years later, roughly, at 2100 BC, or 200 years later. So these, I was looking into these. They're not super complicated. They're basically just a collection of prayers, hymns, and spells dedicated to protecting dead kings and queens, very much in line with like what we kind of expect from like preservation, mummies, that sort of thing. And it's one of the oldest surviving like things that really tells us about what we know of this ancient period, which is incredible. But like, the Ptolemaic dynasty, King Alexander, 300 BC, he had conquered from like the Greece all the way into like Egypt and things like that. And then Ptolemy, one of the generals, started his own dynasty there, and that dynasty went on for a few hundred years. And he revered Khonshu. Even we actually have the temple of I wish I knew how to pronounce it better. Temple of Khonsu, I think is what it is, and which is a temple of Khonshu. This is around today in Egypt, in Luxor, Egypt. And what's cool is archaeologists detected there's tons of blocks and parts of the building that don't match, that are even especially during the Ptolemaic period. So it looks like Ptolemy saw this temple, understood how important Khonshu was, and started rebuilding the temple, as it were. I mean, but again, that was like 300 BC, so like almost 2,000 years after the importance of Khonshu in the mythos of it all, which is, it's just kind of wild how much like ancient Egypt stuck with Alexander and Greek myth, and how it impressed them, and then transferred later to the Romans. Anyway, Khonshu, so again, New Kingdom going into sort of closer to the present. Khonshu is definitely not as menacing. Like I said, usually an eagle-headed god, or a human child, linked to other divine children like Horus and Shu. He usually has a Menat necklace and a crook and a flail. You'll see him being depicted with. The name Khonshu sort of means like traveler, and there's like, when I was reading about Khonshu, there's like multi-named Khonshu. So like Khonshu of this, Khonshu of that. I don't know if it necessarily depicts like other Khonshus, but sort of ideas. So like the provider is one, like Khonshu the provider is one of the three names that is mentioned in
One thing
the
I
coffin
ran
text.
into when I was reading this that kind of broke everything down, the guy was studying like hieroglyphs and stuff, so he would put the hieroglyphs in there and he's just like breaking them down. But the Khonshu could, or any god could, bestow his power on something else. So that's what happened with the golem,
Oh,
basically,
sure.
in the story. So maybe that has something to do with it. Like maybe, Khonshu could become something else, basically, through bestowing
Yeah.
their power.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of like the premise of the Marvel comic too.
Oh, is
Is
it really?
yeah, yeah. I'll go to that really shortly, but like, so yeah, Khonshu, he in general is closely associated with the moon, but also time, youth, and healing, especially like fertility. He's the son of Amun and is also associated with Thoth and La. He takes the appearance of La, and it is believed at the beginning of times, Thoth was the god of the moon, but through time passing, Thoth became more associated with knowledge and writing. So it's sort of like, hey, I'll be the god of knowledge and writing. You can take the moon. So I don't know how like the moon kind of connects with the guardians and travelers things, or if it does, but that's what it is. So Khonshu was regarded to protect travelers at night, is what we kind of believe. So you're moving, it's hot, desert, you can't go during the day, and then you just hope Khonshu's got your back with a nice bright moon to help guide you. So again, older used to be like very aggressive. Later, he was like super chill, and he's like, "No, I'm just a kid, and I'll help you out." So yeah, the Marvel comics, it started in '75, and it's got an interesting kind of thing. There's this guy Mark Spector, and he's got dissociative identity disorder. To put it in a nutshell, he's got multiple personalities, but that's a mega nutshell. There's much more to that, and some comics they would incorrectly say he had schizophrenia, which they later like realized that's not what he has. It's he's got like multiple personas inside of his head, essentially. And he made a pact with Khonsu. So Khonsu and other Egyptian gods in the Disney show will have avatars that represent them that they make pacts with, and again they represent them. So Khonsu is really interesting. He's sort of like it's very Batman-y is what it says. Even the Wikipedia entries like Moon Knight described as Batman, and it is very Batman-y in a way. It's about justice, but through vengeance mainly. So Khonshu wants to get the people who did the bad stuff and punish them. But Khonshu could heal. So the main character, he super healing, that kind of thing, and Khonshu has like a bone eagle head in the show. It's very creepy, very very creepy. There's a great actor who does his voice too. So I see where the menacing part of Khonshu comes from, because he sounds scary and menacing. But the main character, he has multiple personalities. So when he activates his sort of like Khonshu powers, depending on what personality is in control, the appearance of Khonshu or of the Moon Knight will appear or differently. So Mark Spector's is the normal one with the hood, like the kind of the crested hood and a nice big cape. But then there's like the more docile personality where he's got like a suit on, and then there's like a third one. I don't want to go too far into it because the related to the show, and it's really worth watching. I think the best thing about the show too is you really don't have to know anything about Marvel right now. You wouldn't even really know it was a Marvel thing if you weren't aware of it. To be honest, you would just think it was a superhero show based on Egyptian mythology. They did say though that he's going to appear in some later, like in connection to other Marvel stuff. So it's kind of cool to see how it'll play in the bigger universe of things. But it's fun that I'm glad that you said that about the Egyptian gods bestowing powers and connections and things like that, because that's exactly what this show is. There's several like ideas, and
Well, you were saying the depictions too. So there was the child one that you're talking about. There's also
yeah.
what they called a babe, is how
Oh
he
yeah.
described it. And then there was, so it was like the babe, I guess like an actual baby, little baby
Mm-hmm.
Khonshu, and then the child Khonshu, and then they had the animal form. So those
Yeah.
three depictions would come up.
Oh, okay. The babe. I like that a lot. Um,
Maybe he's just super attractive. I don't know.
right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the babe. Hey, babe. What's up? Um, yeah. I'll put going back to a little bit more of like where he fits in the pantheon. He's so Amun and Mut are his parents. Amun is the Egyptian equivalent of Zeus. So Khonshu's pretty important, and his mother is like a direct descendant of Ra. So it's a tight knit group here, and he's pretty high up on the pantheon of things. And I just want to stress the importance of like how old Khonshu or Kenshu, Kenj is. The pyramid texts and the coffin texts go back to 2600 BCE, so like super super ancient, but it remained incredibly prevalent throughout that. Like that's the old kingdom going into the new kingdom, uh, which is also called the Egyptian Empire. I think that's just kind of where it was, north and south. I think that's where that really unified. We talked about that a little bit during King Scorpion. I want to say that, yeah, he's been around for a really long time, and when the Greeks got a hold of it, they really ate it up as well. It was funny. I listened. I mentioned this before. There's a Greek professor I listened to, Kenneth Harrell. He did a really fun book called The Fall of the Pagans and the Origins of Medieval Christianity. I didn't listen to all of it, but it kind of talks about like the legitimizing of Christianity for the Romans. So like, how do you convince these pagans like Christianity is legit? And because Romans were like really big on religions being legit. That's what Judaism was accepted because it was so old, and they're like, oh, they circumcised. That's legit. They are legit, So Christianity being like new, they're like, oh, it's just a crazy new cult, that kind of thing. So, I mean, yeah, I could totally see. I mean, God, going to Egypt, seeing these buildings, seeing these monuments, it's so rich. Then that's 2,000 years ago. So I can't imagine. It's just brilliant. And it's cool to see that it's still going around. Today, like with these stories like Moon Knight, and it's being really well done. So I highly recommend. It's on Disney Plus, the Moon Knight show. Highly recommend checking it out. Oscar Isaac plays the main characters, and he does a really good job. And then the influence of Egyptian mythology is really fun. They did such a good job with pulling it all together. So yeah, Khonsu, healing, moon protects travelers, baby or a bird or an eagle.
Or just a child.
Or a kiddo with a lock of hair, it specifically says too. And I looked and I was like, oh yeah, he's got a little lock of hair right on there. So yeah, thank you, Cammy, for that story. Ramesses the Third, it was saying, was the one who helped build during his time, built the temple that I mentioned, the one that's still around today. And so it would make sense that it'd be closely associated, since the emperors or the pharaohs were like divine, considered themselves like related. So I think that's about all I've got. Cammy, again, thanks. We have, let me see. We're going to be working on our next episode soon. I think we're trying to get on like a bi-monthly basis. If you have any suggestions, let us know. We're running through our list of things, and we've definitely got some stuff stacked, but we always welcome new suggestions for shows and things like that. I also think we should revisit some old ones that we never did on video and get those on video as well.
Bryant just mistook it's bi-weekly.
Oh, bi-monthly would be every 2 months.
Bi-monthly is what we're doing already.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Yeah, you're right. Well, we'll try and do something. Yes. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, let us know. Remember, Mythstorie with an IE at Gmail. Our Facebook group's a great way to get in touch with us too. YouTube comments, all that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Instagram.
Instagram's existing. Yes.
How's our MySpace?
I haven't done a MySpace yet. Maybe I should.
That's why we haven't blown up.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right, everyone. Well, Cammy, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it.
Awesome, everyone. We will see you next time.
Oh.